Today, I'm so excited to have back for round 2 of the Success Habits podcast, my longtime friend, Ron White. Ron is a 2-time U.S. Memory champion. He's been featured on Stan Lee's Superhumans, National Geographic Brain Games, CBS Morning Show, Martha Stewart, and many more. Ron also does the Afghanistan Memory Wall tribute to all the fallen soldiers in Afghanistan, where he also served. Ron is a professional speaker for well over 20 years and the creator of Black Belt Memory, as well as BrainAthlete.com. Ron is also a founding member of the Kyle Wilson Inner Circle Mastermind I do here in Dallas, as well as on the East and West Coast. He was also part of the recent Success Habits book I published. Really excited to have you with us today, Ron. How are you doing?
Hey, well, I'm always excited to be here, and I'm equally as excited about you, and I'm doing really, really good. Thank you.
You know, we were going to start about an hour and a half ago, and we just got into a long conversation. It was awesome. And I thought we should have recorded that, but that's what we did the first time. You were here back when I kicked off the podcast, and we talked, life. We talked about early years, all those things that 20-year plus friends do. And so I really recommend, if people want to go more in depth with Ron, to go listen to that first podcast. Today, we're going to be a little bit more focused. We're going to talk about memory. We're going to talk about one of your passions, cryptocurrency, as well as honoring veterans. Plus, we're going to talk about success habits. And so really looking forward to today being a powerful hour with 2-time U.S. Memory champion. It's so easy to say, but that was a big chunk of your life trying to accomplish that goal.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily the most religious person in the world, but, I remember a pastor once saying, when you read a story, and I might get the Bible character's name wrong here, of Joseph, and it's like 2 sentences. He went through this blah, blah, blah struggle, and it was 2 sentences in the Bible, but the pastor said, think about that. It's 2 sentences in your Bible, but to him, it was, whatever great span of time. And it was so difficult. And it is easy to say 2-time USA Memory champion. And it's something that I'm very proud of. But the amount of work that went into that is actually what I'm the most proud of. And I don't mean to get too touchy-feely, or because that's not necessarily me. But when I think about being the 2-time USA Memory champion, yes, I'm proud of the records. I'm proud of the championship. But what I'm really proud of, the most of, is the enormous amount of work that I put in to do that. I know this isn't what we're not planning to talk about, but that's how these things go. They just kind of evolve. I remember, I do jujitsu, and a couple years ago, I walked into class, and one guy said, "Oh, Ronaldito is late," and I said, "You're mine today." We're great friends, so it was just joking banter. And the coach popped up and said, "I know who the match at the end of class is going to be today." And what he meant by that was, at the end of every class, he picks 2 people everybody gets in a circle, like a pit, like an old school medieval fighting pit, and he puts them against each other. So the entire class, I knew, I'm getting put in the circle against this guy, and the entire class is going to be watching. The entire time through class, I kept saying, "Dude, you're the 2-time USA Memory champion. Dude, you volunteered to go to Afghanistan." In other words, I was reminding myself of all the difficult, hard things that I've done in my life to get myself prepared for that moment. So I kind of went off on a tangent here, but it is something that I'm proud of, and I'm proud of it because of the hard work and what I endured to accomplish it.
No, I love that. And we talked about that in the first podcast, that you have continued to always have these really big projects you will take on that do take a lot of your focus. And we'll talk about some of those throughout this podcast, but I think you're partly wired that way. And it's also part of just purpose and meaning for you as well, right?
I really think it is. I think part of me, a lot of it is purpose and meaning. I think a lot of it is, and I hate to use the word laziness too, because you want to do what you're strong at, but it's easier almost for me to lock myself away and prepare and train in such solitude. It's easier for me to do that than pick up the phone and make 500 or 100 cold calls in a day. So sometimes I wonder, am I just doing what is easiest for me to do, even though it's a lot of work? And I think the answer for that maybe in part is yes, but that doesn't mean it's not very, very difficult, because there's a lot of other things that I could do that wouldn't be as difficult. But it is difficult, but it's also natural for me. And I think, that's what a person needs to do. It's what I need to do. I need to find out what's easy for me, what's natural, and just go all in and double down on that. And so that's what I do with these memory projects or tributes or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I don't think it would be easy for 99.9% of the people. So it is your special calling, your special gift. And you're walking away from income oftentimes to do it, but it's also the thing that makes you very unique in the world. And so I think it's exactly what you're supposed to do. And every time you've done it, it's paid off in many, many, many ways. And so, I've been honored. We're just jumping ahead of ourselves because we're going to eventually talk about the Afghanistan Memory Wall. So I'm going to jump into memory right now, and then we'll come back to a couple of these projects that have really made a difference in tens of thousands of people's lives. So Ron, you are the U.S. Memory Champion. You have been a professional speaker training on memory. You have hundreds of hours of content you've created. So here's the first question for someone that would be outside observing. Why do I need to improve my memory? At the end of the day, it sounds like a lot of hard work, and I don't really get what the benefits are.
The system that I use wasn't developed by me. It's 2,500 years old. And over the past 2,500 years, people have used it for some incredibly impressive things: to remember names and faces, to build relationships, to remember what they read. Cicero, 2,000 years ago, he used this to give speeches in the floor of the Roman Senate. He wrote a book 2,000 years ago teaching memory. Shakespeare had the Globe Theater designed specifically because they used the locations, it's called a memory palace, as cues to remember stuff. Shakespeare's actors used it to memorize their lines. Cicero used it to give his speeches and presentations without notes. I use it to remember names and to build relationships. Now, it doesn't take the amount of work that you would think, because it's actually very easy to master the system, but it does take a little bit more work than opening up a pill bottle and putting in a pill. And that's what this woman wanted. So she didn't do the course, and I didn't get a date with her either. But if you're willing to put in just maybe 10 minutes a day for 2 weeks, blow your mind, which is where I came. I actually had a program once. It was 10 minutes a day for 30 consecutive days.
No, and it was an amazing program. I not only owned it, I sold a bunch of them, through Rohn International and YourSuccessStore. But, Ron, I have watched you present your memory program so many times, and we've done a thing called Memory and Marketing, where we spend a couple of days with people, and you've created Black Belt Memory and other things that even take that to a whole new level. But it's interesting to watch people learn a handful of things and come back the next day and know every single person's name in the room. It's kind of like playing a guitar. I mean, you're not going to play Stairway to Heaven the next day, but you got to learn some chords. And if someone can learn some chords and learn some simple things, they can do so much. Now, if they want to take it to the whole new next level, you provide that too. But just the basics provide so much. So, keeping it simple, it seems like I've heard you talk about there's 3 key things to remembering anything. What would those 3 things be?
Yeah. So if somebody really wanted to improve their memory almost immediately, the first step is focus. You have to be paying attention. And that sounds so silly, but it's really the key to everything. And it's almost so simple. I I feel bad for mentioning it, but it's also so important. You shake somebody's hand and 2 seconds later, you don't know their name. It's not because your memory's terrible and you forgot their name in 2 seconds. The truth is you weren't listening. You weren't paying attention. When I walk into a conference and I see a room full of people, I got to get in the zone. I got to be like, okay, nothing else matters right now, but remembering these people's names. Nothing else matters, or that's at least the highest priority. When a person goes to a business meeting or they go to even a friend's house, they should walk in that door and see those people and just tell themselves immediately, hey, I want to know these people's names. When they say their name, pay attention. A student who's reading a book, the first thing that they should do, they should read the back cover. They should read the table of contents. They should get a goal, focus their mind on what they want to learn. And the back cover and the table of contents will create a framework for things to look for. Focus is number one. The next thing is a picture. And I'm just going to kind of lump several things in here. This picture has to be full of emotion. It has to be full of action. You remember where you were on September 11th. I remember where I was on September 11th. We're both old enough to remember 1986 when the Challenger exploded. We know where we were when we heard about that. Why? Action and emotion. It will cement things into your memory. So if you're focused and you start seeing pictures full of action and emotion, so whenever, let's say that I meet somebody named Kyle, I say, hi, my name's Ron, and they say their name is Kyle. So immediately, and it's not based upon the person, it's based upon the name. I want to create a picture for it. If their name was Steve, I would think of a stove. If their name was Lisa, I would think of the Mona Lisa. If their name was Karen, I would think of a carrot. Now, you don't need to memorize those because you want to create your own. So if somebody says that their name is Kyle, I think of tile, and I see tiles maybe I'll create a story that they're a construction worker and their job is to lay tiles, and they're laying tiles all over their goatee or all in their hair or something like that. So number one, you got to be focused, and it sounds so simple, but it's so true. And number two, whatever you want to remember, you need to see it as a picture. You need to be able to visualize it. Your mind remembers pictures, and pictures that are full of action and emotion. And then the final step is so important. You know, somebody emailed me this week and they're like, Ron, I can't remember anything. I'll read something the next day. I won't remember hardly any of it. But my question was, are you reviewing? Are you reviewing? And they kind of went silent, and they're not reviewing. If I memorized I'm a memory champion. And if I memorized a 50-digit number today and didn't review it, and then in a week tried to remember that 50-digit number, I might be able to recall a few of the points if I don't review the number. But if I review it tonight before I go to sleep, if I review it in the morning, if I review it the next day, it's going to lock into my long-term memory. A lot of times when people say they don't have a bad memory and they can't remember stuff, it's because they look at it once and then expect to know it in 2 weeks. And that just doesn't happen. And I think review is one of the biggest things that people discount. And people say, well, Ron, even when I review, I can't remember 100% of it. You're never going to remember 100% of it. But without a lot of review, you'll get 100% eventually, probably, but you can, it's possible. But those are the three things. Number one, be focused. Number two, think in pictures that are full of action and emotion. And number three, review. If you do those three things, you're going to remember a lot more than you think. Here's something that I would encourage you to do. And it's something that I do with jujitsu. Tell yourself, if you're in a seminar or a conference, or tell yourself if you're going to a business meeting, that you're going to have a test when it's over. All right. When people always say, hey, there's going to be a test at the end, what automatically happens? You're like, okay, I got to focus because I'm going to have a test later on this. Do that to yourself. You spend $1,000 on a conference and you go there. Tell yourself, when this is over, I'm going to have a test. And so as you are driving home from the conference or flying home, test yourself what you recalled. That test will enable you to remember more. Or you're leaving a business meeting. Hey, who did I meet at that meeting? Test yourself. And that review is going to help you.
Love it. And so focus, picture, and then the action's kind of the glue, right? The action's what brings it all together. And so I know I've used your system to memorize speeches, and you talk about numbering your furniture. And again, just keep it really simple. If someone thought about their kitchen or their bedroom and they picked out 5 things and they're thinking with their speech, there are 5 things, how would they take those 5 things and utilize the furniture in a room?
Yeah. So if you wanted to give a Cicero 2000 years ago, when he wrote about memory, his first application was to give speeches without notes. And what Cicero suggested 2000 years ago is that you would number spots around a room. So maybe over here, number one is the printer. Number two is the shelves. Number three is the back of this chair. Number four is my microphone right here that I just pushed down. Number five would be the computer. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I would take the speech that I want to give. Let's say I want to make more money in business. So I take the first point of my speech and I imagine it on the first piece of furniture. Money shooting out of that copier. Number two, I want to manage my time in business. I want to be a better time manager. So I imagine alarm clocks on the shelves right there. Number three, I want to be a better communicator. So I will see a telephone right here on the back of this chair talking about looking at communication. Then I get up in front of the group the next day, no notes in my hand. I just think back to this room. I think back to this office and I think of, hey guys, we want to make more money today in business. The first key to making more money is being an effective time manager. And we want to be better communicators, whether it's on the phone or in person. You could literally take the bullet points, take 10 points, 15 points from the talk you want to give. Imagine those 15 points around a path in a house. When you get up in front of the group, mentally walk around that path in the house in your mind, talking about what you see on the furniture. And this will enable you to give speeches or presentations from memory. I have taught this to United States senators in their living room. One in particular that I'm thinking of. I was sitting in his living room. He was there in a t-shirt and jeans. This guy ran for president of the United States. And he's like, Ron, okay, how do I do this? I'm like, here's what you do. Number pieces of furniture in your living room. We numbered pieces of furniture in your living room. I said, next time you're on the floor of the Senate, take 10 things you want to talk about and put them around this room and think back to this room, and you'll do it without notes.
Love it. And so I think that's the two main things when people hire you or they buy your course. It's names and faces, which is so important for us to remember names and faces. Dale Carnegie wrote a whole book about it. You know, people, the sweetest sound is their own name. And then the other is remembering how to give a speech or remembering notes from a book you've read, things like that. Are those like the two main reasons people come to you?
They are, I sent out an email to my list like a couple of weeks ago. What can I help you memorize? What, if I'm going to do some more videos, what topics do you want me to do it on? And a lot, I'd say a huge portion was, and it's because I have a lot of students on my list, but I want to remember what I read. I want to remember what I study. I want to remember books, which actually it was the exact same method you need to memorize a speech. Those are identical. Names and faces was in there, but another one was languages. People wanted to learn languages. Now, the truth is, I don't think the best way to learn a language is to memorize a language. I think the best way is immersion and conversation and watching movies in that language. But there is an aspect of memorizing a few key words in that language. But I'd say those are the main points, the big reasons people get memory courses.
And here's the reality: systems work. Everything in business is about systems. And so you've created systems. And even when you said, hey, pick out your own pictures for different people's names. Well, that's one way to do it. Or you already have 500, men and women's names that you've already created the picture. And so to me, that's always simpler. In your black belt memory, you give all those systems of how to do every aspect of this. So I love that you have YouTube videos, you give all kinds of things, but I always encourage people just go get the system if they really want to improve and learn how to memorize names, faces. It's so critical. I got to tell you, it's a weakness of mine. I'm very good at math, but when it comes to memorizing names with the face, and you've done this such practical application. You have spoken at my big events, and we would have you get there early and in the VIP section of several hundred people, like the Jim Rohn 3-day events or the Brian Tracy events. You're just greeting people. Little do they know you're going to come up later and have them all stand up and then just go right down and name every person. How powerful to remember people's names after you meet them.
Yeah. It makes people feel good. When I meet people and I remember their names, 2 months later, whatever, it makes them feel good. And guess what? They know I'm a memory champion. They know I'm using a system. They know it's my job to remember the name, and it still makes them feel good. So, because it makes them feel special and important. So think how much more it's going to make people feel when you remember their names. And I say you, I mean everybody listening, because it's not your job to remember their names. So it's even going to have a bigger impact for you than it does for me.
And what I love about it, it's a skill that compounds over the years. It's not, okay, I'll just use it once. If you can learn it and practice it year after year after year, it has compounding results. And so I know you're not wanting me to do commercials. I'm doing this on my own. I hope people go get your system, blackbeltmemory.com. And it's just got so much content. You mentioned earlier memory in a month, and that's something I used to sell. Well, with your Black Belt Memory, I mean, you now have, how many videos have you put in that program?
It's a 40 or 50 video course modules.
Yeah, and you've put so much time and effort into it, and I know you get amazing feedback. I want to shift gears a little bit. I really invite people to go learn more from Ron about his memory, but I'm going to shift gears now and talk about habits and routines. I was honored that you were in a recent book, Success Habits of Superachievers, and we had so many people from the podcast, Darren Hardy, Les Brown, Mark Victor Hansen, Brian Tracy. And I loved your story in the book, and you share some stories from early childhood, you share stories along the way, and eventually the Afghanistan Memory Wall. But we also talk about habits and routines in that story. What are some things you have found that empower you to be consistent, empower you to reach the goals you reach, that you feel like you need to make it a practice?
Well, I do have habits and routines, and some of them concern about are around just trying ways to keep my brain fresh or healthy. And I'm a big believer that your brain is part of your body, right? So one of my habits is I do try to do the intermittent fasting, where I don't eat after 8 p.m. and I don't eat until 11 a.m. Now, I don't always get that perfect, but that is a habit of mine. I will tell you this, I rarely eat before 11 a.m. I mean, I can skip breakfast easy. But that is something that I do. I believe there is some science behind that habit, that not eating for that period of time and sit, it helps clear your mind and clear it out of brain fog. So that's a simple habit, trying to just eat healthy and doing the intermittent fasting daily. I think another habit I have is, exercise. And I try to keep that simple too. I was talking to a friend of mine I do jujitsu with, and I said, man, I didn't really want to go to jujitsu today. He said, just put it on the schedule, man. Put it on the schedule every day. It's in that way. There's no decision. You don't have to decide, do I want to go or do I not want to go? It's on the schedule. You're just going to go. I'm like, oh, that's a good way to look at it. So the next day I showed up and I said, man, I didn't want to be here, but it was on the schedule. I had to be here. Kind of making a joke, but a lot of my habits revolve around stuff like that. My habits are, okay, if I exercise, then my brain's going to be clearer. If I don't eat after 11 p.m., my brain is going to be more clear. That I gave up alcohol about 1.5 years ago. One of the big reasons is my brain is going to be more clear. So I'd say this, almost all my habits that are things that are truly habits revolve around how can I keep my brain clear? Because I think if I do that, then everything else just falls into place. So I don't know if I have a lot of habits other than that. I will attack projects and I'll give myself a goal and I got to get this done. I got to get this memorized, or I'm working on my land right now. I got to get this field cleared or whatever. And I just feel like whatever goal it is, I can attack it better with a clear brain. And so my brain almost always revolves around, my habits almost always revolve around keeping my brain healthy.
Well, I noticed you're really consistent on social media posts. You also are a student of Stoic philosophy. I suspect you might have some daily routines on whether it's just reading some different Stoic writings. But your consistency on social media, like I'm definitely, I do it on a whim. I don't have a schedule I go by, but it seems like you do. And so that's more of a habit, I would think.
Well, on social media, I wish I'm jumping back into my YouTube channel. We got 400,000 followers there. And
Wow.
that's, here's the thing with social media for me. When I post consistently on LinkedIn or YouTube, I can see a spike in sales. When I post on Facebook, I really can't. But Facebook's just so fun for me. I just use it. I end up posting there a lot. But I'll be honest with you, a lot of my Facebook posts, in my other life, I wish I would have been a comedian. So I'm always like trying to think of jokes and stuff. And I will post jokes 3 or 4 a day, but they're all private where only I can see them. And then I'll post it and I'll think about it. And I'm like, I could have worded that a little different. And I'll go in and I'll tweak the joke or whatever, so a lot of times I don't have anything to post on social media. Nothing. I got nothing going on today, but you know what I do? I got jokes that I wrote 3 weeks ago. So I'll just scroll my feed and find a joke that I wrote and something funny that maybe not a joke's not the right word. And I'll copy and paste it and post it for my post today. But you're right. I do try to do one Facebook post a day. And you know what I find? A lot of people say this. They'll be like, oh, Ron, when I see him in person, they'll talk to me something about Facebook. I enjoy following you on Facebook. I enjoy your post. And I'm like, you never liked anything. I didn't even know you followed me. So I guess there is a lot more people out there watching than you think.
That's a great point. And it does sound like you're intentional. And when you are in the business you're in, you give speeches, you have products, 400,000 subscribers on YouTube. That's amazing. Part of that whole thing is it doesn't always matter who you know, it's who knows you, right? And so it's just putting yourself out there. I love Jeffrey Gitomer says, where do you live? Well, I live in Fort Worth, or I live in Keller. No, you live on Facebook. You live on your website. You live on Instagram. You live on YouTube, and anyone can find you. But you got to put yourself out there. So I know it's an intention for you, and that's a way people can learn from you. And you add humor to it. You add your personality. I think if your people aren't following Ron, they need to. It's great information, but it's also very clever and well done. And, last thing I'll say on habits is Tom Ziglar, who's also part of the book and a good friend of both of ours. He said one of the best ways to overcome a bad habit is replace it with a good habit. And I know as you brought your drink over this morning, like you have some things that you do now to help replace maybe a previous habit. Have you found that to be true, whether it's reading or, whether it's business or personal? Instead of stopping doing something, maybe add something else to that in place of it.
Yeah, and you know me, and I've gotten more comfortable talking about this, and this isn't a victim thing, and I'm not trying to blow anything out of proportion, but I get anxiety issues sometimes, and in the past I really didn't know what it was. I just thought I needed this time for a drink, but I wouldn't just drink. I would I get these oh my God, I'm getting attacked or whatever, not really getting attacked, but in your mind, you think you are. So then I just start doing shots. And I've replaced that terrible habit of drinking 20 shots of scotch in an evening with a guy once explained it to me this way, because he knows I love the memory palace. He knows I love, going around a room and memorizing stuff. He said, Ron, imagine you're in a palace and you're on the top floor and you keep going down this staircase. And as you go down the staircase, every single floor, there is a door and there's an opportunity to get off the staircase and the goal is to get off as quick as you can, because when you're in the middle of this anxiety and this panic, the farther you go down the staircase, the worse and the worse it's going to be. He said, keep this in mind. Every single floor has a door to get off. Your goal is to open that door and get off at the first available floor and not get all the way down to the bottom where everything's just chaos and is terrible and you're doing 20 shots of scotch. So that was a bad habit that I had, going all the way down the staircase, getting to the bottom, doing scotch. Now I've put in safety guards for myself where I will, as soon as that staircase starts going, the first door is always, wait a minute, are these things that I'm thinking rational? Are these things that I'm thinking, do I have any evidence for them? Is it? So the first thing is just questions that I ask myself. Another thing is I always carry around, bottled water or a relatively healthy drink here. I'm replacing the negative thinking and the negative drinking with positive drinking and positive thinking.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And do you think it helps to have other people aware of that journey you're on? Like if you just kept that totally to yourself, would it be a little bit harder to stay on it? Like I know with me with health, if I have a couple of people that I'm accountable to, or at least they know what I'm working on, it helps because, am I going to eat this thing of ice cream when I have to talk to Brian tomorrow or whatever?
I think maybe, so, there's a guy that I've been on his podcast and I've mentioned it to you before. His name is Patrick Bet-David, and he's really big following. And I just read his book. And I'm not here to promote people's books, but it's a really good book. And he talked about his anxiety and his panic attacks. And when I was reading that book, I'm like, oh my gosh, Patrick Bet-David had this.
It's called is it the 5 Next Moves? Is that
it
the
is.
one?
By the way, I've memorized every single page of that book.
Whoa. Okay.
You could give me a number between 1 and 277, and I could tell you what I learned from that page. And I recently sent Patrick a video with a blindfold on, and I said what I learned on every single page from him. He recently commented on something I did on Facebook and said, Ron, I heard about what you do with my book, and you're amazing. And you know what? I don't mean to get too sidetracked here, but that's enough. That's enough. That whole memory project, I might not make any money from that project with Patrick, and which wasn't the goal. But I gained the knowledge of the book, and Patrick told me it was amazing, and that's enough. But let me go back to, I'll button this when I was up. I think it's good for me that other people know what I have with anxiety, because maybe people like Patrick David talk about it, and then it helps somebody else. But I don't know if I'm selfishly doing it to let people know to help other people, to be honest with you. I think unselfishly. I think it's more, I just want people to maybe understand me a little more, I think that's part of it. I think I am more open talking about it now because I have realized it doesn't make me wimpy and it doesn't make me weak to admit it. And that's something that I kind of would, and it's still something I struggle with. How could they not think I'm wimpy by admitting this? But intellectually, I know it's not true. That's not true. And, there was a study once done, and it's that if you go out on Facebook and you say, hey guys, I'm studying to be a doctor. I'm going to be a doctor. And everybody comments, wow, that's congrats. You're going to be the best doctor ever. You're going to be awesome. You're so smart. You're going to do this. You're going to nail this. If the person who does that goes out and proclaims their goal in public, is actually less likely to accomplish the goal than the person who keeps it silent and works on it in private. And what the scientific studies have shown, whether you agree or disagree, maybe the studies are flawed, but every study showed the same thing. The people who announce it publicly, while they get the support, they're getting the congratulations. They're getting the good feeling that comes with accomplishing the goal without having accomplished the goal. So it's enough. They're like, hey, I don't even need to do it. I already got the praise. But the people who keep it silent and work on it, they haven't got the praise for achieving it. They haven't got that feel-good feeling. And so they're actually more likely to accomplish it. Now, you can say there's a count. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't tell your close circle of friends, or whatever, because you need their accountability and you need their support, or you got a coach or whatever. So I'll be honest with you. In most things in my life that I'm working on, I do keep private, and it's not necessarily because of that scientific study, but it is something that I keep in mind. But maybe now, a year and a half into it, maybe I would like to have a bottle of scotch or a shot of scotch. But I don't, because so many people know about it. And so you're probably right. You're probably right. Now that I'm this far into it, it's a shriek, and I don't want to stop it.
Love it. And I share your, I feel the same. I don't share publicly usually what I'm up to or any of those things. And I agree. It's almost like you're giving your power away, or you're giving your energy away. And I can totally relate to the celebration part. You know, we do these books, we hit #1 bestseller, and we never announce it till after we've hit it. Because if you say the book's coming out next week and people start patting you on the back and you haven't done it yet, right? So we want that after the fact, the congratulations after the fact. And it's no, great point on that. So Ron, I want to talk about a couple of your passions, and they're very, very different passions. We'll begin with this one. I don't know that we'll spend much time on it, but you were a pretty early adapter to cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. I mean, in the big scheme of things, maybe not so, but as far as the huge awareness people have of it now, I feel like you were one of the early adapters in my world. Can you talk a little bit about, well, first of all, when did you first really take an interest in cryptocurrency, and what was it that you saw that you were a believer?
Well, March 2017 is when I had set aside some money for some employees and some things, and just overnight, you know, both employees ended up taking other jobs, and I had this money set aside. And so this, 4 years ago. So, it was 6 months worth of their salary. We're talking, I don't even remember exactly what it is, $40,000 or something like that. And I was looking at Facebook ads. I was looking at all this other stuff. And then I'm like, why not? Okay, why not? I'm looking at this cryptocurrency, and I did see it in a way like the internet. I missed the internet boom because I was just, in my 20s, and really, but I didn't have any money either. So I missed that. And I remember posting on Facebook in like 2017. I'm like, I missed the last really incredible opportunity, which was the internet. I'm not going to miss this one. And I posted that in a Facebook group that I was belonging to. But here's, I'd like to say what I saw in cryptocurrency is real comparable to the internet. Or even real estate. Imagine that your family would have purchased real estate in Manhattan 150 years ago. And there's only a certain amount of real estate in Manhattan, and it's not going to get any larger. You could keep that in your family and pass it down for generations. Here's cryptocurrency. I see it the exact same way. I see it as real estate, but I see it as virtual real estate, because there's a fixed number for most of the cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Litecoin or Ethereum. It's not increasing. Like the money supply for the US dollar is increasing. So when I looked at this, in 2017, I think part of it was the anarchist in me a little bit, that I'm a patriotic guy, but part of it was the anarchist. I'm like, screw the system. Yeah, we're gonna have a different currency. But I was really looking at it like the internet in a way. And I think cryptocurrencies, let me give you an example here. You have this piece of real estate right now in Manhattan. The real estate could be comparable to something like Ethereum today. Ethereum is a cryptocurrency, and people, really a better way talk about it is a crypto asset, because it's not a currency that we're going to use like the US dollar. Everybody thinks when they think of cryptocurrency, they think, oh, this is going to replace the dollar and you expect me to go to Starbucks and buy something with my Ethereum. It is so much bigger than that. It is so much bigger than that. You have this plot of land in New York, in Manhattan. That's Ethereum. Ethereum is what people are going to build the next internet on. There's going to be another internet after the internet, and that's not the best way to describe it, but it's going to be the blockchain. And it's going to be built on things like Ethereum, like things called Cardano, things like called Polkadot. On top of this real estate is going to be skyscrapers. And some of these skyscrapers are going to, it would be comparable to the .com businesses, AOL, Netscape, all these other things, all these buildings go up and the AOL building crumbles and it fails. The Netscape building crumbles and it fails. But the Amazon building, boom, it was successful. So here's the real estate. I'm not so much investing in my crypto asset philosophy, my cryptocurrency philosophy. I'm not so much trying to pick which skyscrapers are going to be the biggest in crypto assets or cryptocurrency. I'm not trying to, it's going to be Netscapers. I want to pick the foundational ones. And one of the foundational ones is Ethereum. Another foundational one that people are going to be building on top of is Cardano or Polkadot. Now, these foundational ones could fail, but let me give you a couple use cases here for what cryptocurrencies could be used for. And I apologize, I'm going on a little rant here, but when you think about there's 1,000 of them, and I don't try to pick the skyscrapers. I try to pick the foundational ones that the skyscrapers are going to be built on. Imagine this. Imagine you want to send money to somebody right now in Africa. What do you have to do? 57% of the country or the continent of Africa doesn't have bank accounts. To send somebody money in Africa right now, or Mexico or Ecuador, you got to go down to your Walgreens, get a stand in line, get a MoneyGram, and send it to them and pay some crazy fee, $20 to send them $60. And then they got to go to the MoneyGram and pick it up there. Imagine if on your cell phone, you see that person, what's your Bitcoin address? Boom, you send it to them for no fee. So that is a great application. Another application for crypto assets, cryptocurrency, is going to be decentralized loans. Imagine you own this real estate in Manhattan. You own $100,000 worth, let's say. Oh man, I want to go buy a new car, but I don't want to sell my real estate. I don't want to sell the land. I'm just going to put it up as collateral. I can get 70% of the value. So you take out $70,000. You don't have to pay taxes on a loan. You know, if you sold it, you'd have to pay capital gains taxes. So you take out the loan, you get $70,000. You don't have to pay taxes on it. It's a loan. And then you actually never have to pay the loan back, as long as you just pay the interest, which, might be 3 or 4%. Decentralized finance, which that's what that's called. Sending money. One other application I'll give you here is video games. This is one of the real big reasons I got into cryptocurrency in 2017, video games. Imagine when I was a kid playing Donkey Kong, if I had won the highest level and I had gotten a badge, a power level, and then I got tired of the Donkey Kong game. I'm like, I'm tired of Donkey Kong. I don't want to play Donkey Kong anymore. I want to play Pac-Man now. Boom, I turn on Pac-Man, and there's a little button that says, send your power upgrades that you earned in the Donkey Kong game over to Pac-Man, and now you got the power, the upgrades in this game. That's a game changer. Guess what? That is the future of video games with cryptocurrencies, crypto assets. So I know I went on a long rant here, but what I see for the future, I see decentralized finance. I see gaming. I see being able to send money anywhere around the world. And there are some objections people have, and we don't need to debate the objections because we got a limited time here, but the objections probably are, is the government going to shut this down? Does it consume too much energy? And there are actually answers to those questions.
Hey, thanks for going into the depth and saying things that a lot of people probably haven't heard before. So thank you for the analogies. I do have a couple of things I'll play off that. One is, so there are certain countries that the citizens just aren't allowed to use PayPal. Is that accurate?
There are countries that PayPal is not available.
Yeah, so that would be
use PayPal. You have to have a bank account. It has to be connected to a bank account. So a large portion of the world doesn't have a bank account. 57% of Africa doesn't have a bank account. And
so for someone, and again, we're not financial advisors, we're not giving advice or stock advice, but if someone hasn't, they don't have any type of crypto portfolio, would you start with an exchange like Coinbase to put money in? Like, where would someone start to say, okay, I don't know that much, but I'm going to put whatever amount of money into crypto. Do they need an exchange bank account like a Coinbase?
To get started, you would need to get something like Coinbase if you wanted to purchase. And I always recommend people start at Coinbase. Why? Because it's the most user-friendly. And the interface is simple. Plus, all the coins available on crypto on Coinbase have been vetted, and they're more serious coins. You can probably buy about 20 on Coinbase right now, maybe more, 20 or 30. All of those ones are not likely to disappear overnight. So I tell people to go to Coinbase. Number one, it's ease of use, and its interface is simple. Number two, the coins that they list are good coins. They're not going away. Once you have a basic understanding of cryptocurrency, then it would probably be safe to move to something like Coinbase Pro or Binance or something like that. Because why? Because their fees are less. Coinbase charges high fees. Well, then you go back to, well, why would you want to pay high fees? If you're just beginning to learning, I think paying those high fees is worth it, or higher fees is worth it.
Well, are the other people trading crypto then? Like, you would need, the higher fees aren't ongoing. That's only if you're trading.
Yeah, every time you buy and sell.
Okay, but a lot of what you shared, it doesn't sound like, it's just like the stock market. Some people trade, some people actually buy and hold. So if someone bought Apple and held it, or bought Amazon and held it, or bought Bitcoin 3 or 4 years ago and held it, Coinbase would be fine. It's the Coinbase Pro only if you're trying to trade a lot, it sounds like.
Moving stuff around.
So Bitcoin had hit almost 70, I think. Now it's around 36 or so. So is now a good time to buy, not to put you on the spot? And can someone put in $10,000 and buy percentages of Bitcoin, or like Ethereum that you talked about? I think it's around 26 something, 2,400, 2,600. Are you buying percentages, or are you actually needing to buy even numbers?
Yeah. So my biggest fear is not with cryptocurrency is not that I lose my investment, because I've kind of taken the money off the top a little bit. I haven't taken much off the top, but I've taken back my initial investment. My biggest fear is not that I lose what I have. My biggest fear is I tell people who are legitimately just trying to get their business going or make money or whatever, and I tell them, hey, this is a great time to buy it, and they buy and they lose it. That's my biggest fear. It's one of the reasons I keep as quiet as I can about cryptocurrency. I don't want to lead to anybody losing money. So invest only what you're okay with losing, and I seriously mean that.
Yeah.
And because it could absolutely, I don't think it's going to disappear. You've got Bank of America, you've got JP Morgan, you've got Chase, you've got Goldman Sachs, all making predictions. The Bitcoin's going to be over $100,000 in the next 12 months. All of them are making that prediction. PayPal, MasterCard, and Visa will be using the Ethereum network to transact cryptocurrency transactions. So with all these big players, I don't think it's going to zero, but it could. And yes, you could buy just fractions. I think yesterday I bought $200 or $300 in Ethereum. I just went on the app and
so that's just kind of you're doing dollar cost averaging. It's just like put money in. When it goes down, just put some more money in.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it. Well, very good. So, hey, thanks, Ron, for being honest and just sharing. I know there's no upside for you on this. You don't have a course you're selling, but I know it's a passion of yours, which leads me to another passion of yours. You served in the military. We tell that story in the Success Habits book. We talk about it in the previous podcast of why you joined after 9/11. But let's jump ahead to after coming back from Afghanistan, serving there, you decided to memorize all the fallen soldiers, name, rank, and the order in which they passed. And it's called the Afghanistan Memory Wall. And this is Memorial Day weekend. And so I know it's a special weekend for you. So just share a little bit about what the Afghanistan Memory Wall is and why you did it, and some of the feedback you've gotten about it.
Well, I memorized everybody who died in the war in Afghanistan in the order of their death. There's 2,400 of them. I memorized their rank, their first name, their last name. It's 7,000 words. And I travel around the United States, or I did from 2013 to 2019. 6 years with this wall, and I would write out everybody who died in the war and the order of their death. It's like watching the Vietnam Wall be written out by one person, and this one person is writing it out from memory. Now it's less names. Afghanistan was 2,400, and Vietnam was 59,000, but it's the same concept there. That's what you're seeing, a tribute to the troops written out from memory. And I did it to say that you're not forgotten. You know, a lot of people, when I was memorizing it, said, well, why don't you just stand at a microphone and say the names? That way you don't have to worry about the spelling. It would actually be easier. Or why don't you just stand at a microphone and read the names? No, you know, that would be easier. And I said, no. I want to write it on a wall, because I want people to be walking by this wall and be stopped dead in their tracks and look at its 52 feet of names, 8 feet high. And I want them to say, wow, I did not know it was that many. Wow, I did not understand the scope of the sacrifice. And that's what I wanted to visually see it, the loss. And that's what happens. People will walk by the wall. You know, I'm doing it in New York City, in Times Square. And there was a girl jogging. She was out just jogging. And as she was jogging, she just, because when you see it, you know, it has a military look to it. It has a Vietnam Wall look to it. You instantly know this is probably something military. So they'll stop, then they'll see the names or the ranks: lieutenant, private, first class, sergeant. Then they know it's military. So this young woman, 30 years old, is out jogging around. She stops dead in her tracks, and she asks my helper, "What is this?" Knowing intuitively what it is. And he told her, he memorized everybody who died in the war in Afghanistan. And he's writing them in the order of their death. And her eyes just fill up with tears. And then my helper gets my attention. He says, "Can you talk?" This woman wants to talk to you, ask you a few questions. And she said, "Can you tell me where this name is on the wall?" And I said, yeah. I know exactly where that's at. It's number 1,300 and whatever. And I took her to the name. And then I asked the question, "Why did you want to know this name? How do you know this person?" And she said, "Well, my brother was a little guy. And when he was in Afghanistan, they would go on marches, and he couldn't physically carry his backpack. So this guy was a big guy," the name she pointed to on the wall. "Whenever they would go out on marches, he would take his backpack and my brother's backpack, and he would carry them both. And then he would walk in front of my brother." She said, "Well, one day when he was doing that, he stepped on an IED and he died." She said, "Because he did that, my brother is alive today, because he went in front of my brother and carried my brother's backpack. My brother's alive." And she looked at the name and she just started crying. And then she laughed. And I was so overwhelmed that day. I'm writing out 2,400 names. I'm trying to make sure everything. I'm the memory guy, but I didn't actually pay attention to which guy she was talking about. And when the dust settled at the end of the day, I started thinking about that story again. And I thought, oh my gosh, I wish I knew why can't I remember which guy she was talking about? I wish I could remember which one. And then it hit me. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I don't know which one, because that is the story of every single one of them. Every single one of them carried our backpacks. Every single one went out in front of us. Every single one of them died for us, for our freedoms. So I don't remember the specific guy's name. I think it was Katzenberger. I'm not certain, but that's the story of all of them. And that is why that I do it.
Wow, so powerful. And I've heard so many different stories you've shared in the past, whether it's a mother, a grandmother, a commander that had troops, and it's got to be so rewarding. What goes on in your mind? So it's a 10-hour exercise, and you're out in the middle of elements. Sometimes it's windy, sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's cold, sometimes it might rain. And you also are involved in setting up. I mean, you've driven cross country and spent a week of your life putting this together. When you're actually doing the 10 hours, which is a huge investment of energy, right, and effort. And I've never asked you this question before, Ron. When you're going through that exercise, I don't want to compare it to a rock band playing in front of a concert, but you're pouring yourself into something that doesn't have an immediate feedback to it, like doing a seminar. But what's the energetic exchange for you during that 10 hours of just pure labor?
It is, you're right. It is extremely difficult. I do put up the wall, and it is, and sometimes I'll do it alone, and it's an 8-foot tall wall. It's 52 feet long. And so just that in itself is a very exhausting process, but I just go to some place in my mind, this has got to be done. I'm going to do it. But when I start writing on the wall, I am looking at the wall, and I often don't even, I just like, everything just fades away in a way. I don't even really know what's going on back behind me. The first time I did it, February 28th, 2013, you were there. Chris Widener was there. My mom and my dad was there. And I turned and I started writing. I did not know what was going on behind me. I didn't know that the people, literally, I mean, just crowds. When I see the pictures later of the crowds of people gathered around, I'm like, well, I had no idea. There's a picture. It's one of my favorite pictures. It's me doing it in front of the Alamo. And I'm right there in front of the Alamo, and there's a crowd of people, and people are pointing, and they're like that. And I'm like, man, how did I not know I was in the middle of the crowd? So I am just so zoned in on the wall and the memory process. The only thing that I am really aware of and that I really hear is I do hear when people start looking for names and they're saying names, those Private First Class Austin Staggs or Timothy Steele. I hear people say those names in the crowd, and I do know that they're on the wall. I'm just so much in a zone, though. Everything just kind of fades from behind.
So, Ron, when you came up with the idea to do this, I remember you sharing it with me. We were at a Texas Rangers game, and you said it's going to take you, 11 months to do it because you're going to write it out. You're not going to just verbally say it. So all the different spellings and how difficult it would be. And I think of people that make movies. I think of people that write songs, people that write books, that oftentimes they say the idea was given to them. Now, if they wouldn't have said yes, it would have been given to someone else. But going back in time to when you had the idea, and then it was a huge investment of time and energy, months and months of hours and hours, and then actually executing it. And this is 8 years ago when you did your first one. You've done many, many, many since. Just looking back, I mean, it has to be rewarding to know all the stories you've heard from family members and how much it meant to them. And again, Jim Rohn said, it's not what you get, it's what you become. The person you became in the process of following through on this whisper and taking an idea that sounds, it sounds good, but oh my God, the execution is a commitment, which is an understatement. And now watching, you've provided this amazing gift for so many people. And I know so it's not, I'm not trying to give you a pat on the back because I know that's not what you're wanting, but how does it feel to have been on the other side of this and to know you said yes to that?
Yeah. I when I'm at the end of my life and I look back on the things in my life I'm proud of, I think that would be at the top because I know how difficult it was. I know what I had to sacrifice, and I know it was just an idea. It's not like I went and got a college degree somewhere, which is, and I'm not knocking that. That is something to be very proud of, but that's something that like exists. There's a structure for it. What do you want to do? Oh, I want to go do this thing. It's going to take a lot of work and it's going to be a lot of hard effort. And then I'm going to get reward. Well, you've seen many people do that throughout the course of history. This was something that didn't exist. Nobody had ever done anything like this. So I'm proud of the creativity of the idea. I'm proud of the hard work that went into it. I'm proud of the uniqueness. Most of all, I'm proud that I was able to honor the fallen. And when I was memorizing it, people said, where are you going to write it? And I'm like, I don't know. I really don't. I have no idea. And I said, if I just get a piece of plywood and a farmer lets me use his land and I write it out there and it's just me and the plywood that know that I'm doing this, I'll be happy with it. Little did I know when I said that 8 years later, I'm going to now have 10 acres. And so I'm going to be doing that on my land, I hope this year. Wow. And so that part of what I said will be true. I'm going to put it on social media, but it's just be me and the wall. And that's going to be meaningful because it's something that I had said that I would do, and I will now. One final thing I'll say on that is a friend of mine, a friend of yours, T.C. Cummings, a former Navy SEAL, he was talking to me about it in 2012. He said, Ron, you don't understand. People are going to be walking by this wall and their loved one's name going to be on the wall and they're going to wait for 4 hours. And as you get closer to the name, the anticipation is going to build and they're going to whisper to their family member, he's getting ready to write the name. He's getting close to it. He's getting closer. He said, and then you're going to write it. And when you write it, it's just going to be a flood of emotions coming out from them. And TC's a good friend of me. So I said, TC, man, I appreciate your friendship and I appreciate your support. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, but I appreciate you telling me that because that gives me fuel to keep going. Not only was TC right, that has happened every single time I've done the wall.
Wow. So, Ron, thank you so much for saying yes to that whisper, because you're so right. You had to take an idea and go build it from scratch and create something. And so it's something where at Memorial Day weekend, this weekend, I know that's a very special holiday for you, and holiday's not even the right word, right? It's a remembrance. So what do you want to say to veterans out there or family members of veterans?
Well, specifically on Memorial Day, it's a day to recognize the fallen. So I would just say to the families of the fallen, we enjoy the freedoms we do today. On 9/11, Osama bin Laden, his goal was not just to knock over a few buildings and make a statement. His goal was, his ultimate goal was a caliphate, a worldwide religious caliphate where everything was under his radical view of religion. The only reason he didn't stop because he was a nice guy and he was like, well, that's enough. I made my point. Now I'm going to go back and farm or whatever. He stopped because he had to. He stopped because we had him on the run. We had him hiding in caves and we eventually killed him. That's the reason he stopped. If there was not somebody to stop him, he would have just wiped out everything. If we just said, okay, whatever, do it. But men and women stood up and said, you got to stop this, and we're going to stop you. And too many of them lost their lives, 2,400 in Afghanistan. And so I would say to the families of the fallen, you stopped, your son or daughter did a good thing, and they stopped evil and its aggression in that moment. And in previous wars, there's been similar circumstances where Hitler did not stop killing the Jews just because he did enough at 6 million. He stopped because he was forced to stop. And so to the families of the fallen, I would say the sacrifice is more than any of us can imagine. And it's not, when I say it's not forgotten, and it's appreciated, and it's worthwhile. Thank you is such a hollow word, but thank you for your family's sacrifice.
Wow, so powerful. I remember when you made the decision to go to Afghanistan, that I was your agent, and it was a huge business sacrifice for you. I mean, you were at the peak of your speaking career, and you felt so passionate about serving your country. And for those that don't know, I mean, Ron was in naval intelligence. So when he's sharing his perspective, he was on the inside of many things and just had huge awareness. And so when you do this wall, you have context more than most people would have. And then your father is a lifelong policeman. And so, that's just been a big part of your life, being a patriotic, caring about your country, caring about your community. And I'm honored by our friendship, and honored, for you bring that reality to my world. You and people like Tim Cole, 31-year Colonel of the Marines, those are reminders to me of this topic and the gratitude and appreciation we need to have for all the freedoms we have.
Yeah, it's a very real thing. And I don't begrudge people who don't maybe see Memorial Day the same way, because they didn't maybe live the life that would have led them to see it the way that I see it. And that's okay. So I have no, bad feelings towards people who just kind of glance over it. But for those of you who care to listen and think about it a little bit, it is a day just to think, wow, that's really amazing that people would be so passionate about self-sacrifice like that. When I was in Afghanistan, I remember I was sitting in a room with about 100 young guys. I was probably the old man in the group, about 35 or 36, I guess. We were all just sitting on the floor waiting on the airplane to come pick us up. And the news was on. And somebody says, I can't remember why the news host said this, but they were talking about prisons or something. And they said, there's a lot of people deployed right now. And they said, and they started talking about prisons. I don't remember what the context was, but the news host, the anchor said, well, there's a big difference between being in prison and being deployed to Afghanistan. And we're all just silent, exhausted, sitting there. And one of the young kids, about 22, he yelled out, "Not much." And the whole room, 100 people, just died laughing. It's a unique experience, one that I'm glad I went through, but I'm glad that I went through it and I came out okay. Not everybody did.
Oh, such a great point. We're going to wrap up here, Ron. It's been a great time to spend with you. I'm honored that you're one of the founding members of my inner circle. I have an inner circle mastermind. I talk about a ski trip I went on with John Assaraf and Darren Hardy and a few others. And they were all part of the San Diego mastermind group. And I said, I feel like I'm in the desert. This is 2014. And they said, well, you should go back to Dallas and start your own. And I came back and I did it for me. I called you, I called Robert Helms, and I said, I want to start meeting on a regular basis with people that will inspire me, make me better. And since then, we have just amazing members. Nui Scruggs, 3-time Emmy winner on Channel 5 Sports, and Mike Muni, the founder of Act Software. I mentioned Tim Cole, 31-year Colonel in the Marines. And just amazing members all over the country. And you were one of the founders of that group, and you come, you present, we interview, you share your experiences. It's a very authentic opportunity, right, for us all just to be ourselves. I know last time we met live, you showed up, and I always learn something new about you every time, right? So it's, even though we've known each other for 20 years, but talk about associations, talk about getting around other people that make us better. And that probably almost for me, every area of my life that's improved, it's been from other people in that group. Because when you get around, if you just get around people like you, that's just one muscle. But if you can get around other people who are excelling in different parts of their life and who bring different dynamics, that's pretty powerful. So just love you to share your experience.
Yeah. And when I start off saying this, you're going to be thinking, Ron, I didn't ask you a question about Bitcoin. I asked you a question about the power of the network, but I'm going to take it back to Bitcoin for 30 seconds. Why is Bitcoin becoming more and more and more and more valuable over time? Because the network, the people who are using it and relying on it, is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger over time. Pretty soon, this network effect, this huge network effect, is going to make Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, crypto assets, so valuable, because the number of people, JP Morgan, Chase, PayPal, Venmo, that's using them. So I see the same way with your inner circle. It is getting more and more and more and more valuable over time because of the power, the networking effect, the power of the network. You're creating a network of people who are all connected to other people, and you're bringing them together. And every year you add this one piece, or you add this one piece, and maybe some parts of the network didn't go so well, so you take those pieces away. Kind of making a joke there, but you're building the network. And this network effect is making it more and more and more and more valuable over time. It's more valuable today than it was the first one that I attended, just because of the people that you're always inviting. I stopped drinking 18 months ago. That was in large part due to two people, Tammy Mitchell and Kyle Wilson. And that's your network right there that led to that huge life change for me. So there's power in that, making myself better. And there's another guy once and I was talking to him about the inner circle, and I'm like, man, how can I tell people about Kyle Wilson's inner circle where they would, want to join this in this wonderful experience? And he said, man, it's just about the people. It's about the network. He said, what Kyle shares is gold. What all the speakers he brings in, what they all share is gold. But the real value here is in the power of the network that you're building. And I'm not, and when I use the word network, I think a lot of people think of networking, where you're like at a mixer and you're handing out business cards and you're saying, hey, and that ain't what it's like. It's networking, building friendships, building relationships. I just read Patrick Bet-David's book, and I'm not trying to give this guy two plugs in one thing, but I really liked it. He said that he was at a conference once, and this guy walked up to him and said, hey, my name's Richie. You have impacted me so much. And Patrick Bet-David was like, oh, thank you. And then he got out a business card. He goes, yeah, if you ever want to buy real estate in Florida, I'm your man. And Patrick was like, what? That's like walking up to a bar and asking a girl to go home and sleep with you. You just met her 2 seconds ago. Yeah. And then he tells the opposite story. And this is where your inner circle, how I see your inner circle. Patrick met a guy named Eli. And he found out through the course of just becoming friends, he found out Eli's son was in prison. And Patrick wanted to make a difference. Patrick drove to prison and met with this kid and just talked to him once a month for 6 months, changed the kid's life. And the father, Eli, ended up giving Patrick $30 million in a business deal over a course of time. Patrick didn't do it for that. He did it for the relationship and the friendship, but it led to $30 million. And I see that happening with your inner circle all the time. People aren't going and handing out business cards and saying, hey, call me whenever you need real estate. Call me whenever you need this. They're building friendships. They're building relationships. They're not visiting people's sons in prison, maybe, but on that level. They're calling up Ron White on the phone and they're like, dude, What are you drinking for? Stop this right now. And then those relationships become real. And then those real relationships do lead to business sometimes, but maybe they don't. Maybe they just lead you to become a better person. But I'll conclude it by saying this: the power of the inner circle is the network effect. It's getting stronger and stronger and stronger every year. And I'm honored to have. I was an early adopter to Bitcoin, kinda, and I'm an early adopter to the inner circle. How lucky can I be?
No, hey, Ron, thank you. And I think you're exactly right. It's not a transactional group. That's not the purpose of it. And I think the early intention was I did it for me, right? And my constant thought is when we have new people come in or whatever, it's an application type process. I'm always thinking, will this, and when we have special guests, we've had a who's who, Brian Tracy, Les Brown, you name it. But I'm always thinking, will Ron White benefit? Will Robert Helms benefit? Will Tim Cole benefit? Like, who are we doing this for? Who do I really want to show up that will make me better and make them better? And since it's not a true business model, I think that's why it's worked so well. It's not driven by a business model, or I would do it totally different than how I do it. It's just an amazing community of awesome people. And who knows how long it's going to last? You can't control, if a church is going to keep doing well or whatever, because the game's always changing. But it's been awesome, and so honored to have you part of that amazing group. And I always tell people, if you want to spend time with Ron White, you need to come to the inner circle. Spend time with Robert Helms, come to the inner circle, because we hang out for 8 to 10 hours, and it's pretty amazing.
It certainly is. Somebody once asked me, "Hey, Ron, I want Kyle to book me as a speaker." What speaker doesn't? I said, "Well, I think the first step for you, I know you're probably not going to book this guy as a speaker, but he could get your knowledge." I said, "The first step is join his inner circle. Just spend time with him." He's like, "Nah, I'm not going to do that. I've bumped into Kyle before at business meetings. I know Kyle." I'm like, "No, you don't. If you haven't spent time with him in your inner circle and hung out with him for 8 hours, you're just wrong." But I hope to see people there.
I had a call with a guy a couple of days ago who does big time stuff with Bob Proctor and Les Brown. And it all began by the simple concept. We've talked about it 100 times. Me and Robert Helms also talk about it. It's just called showing up. It's like you and I would do memory and marketing events. And guess what? After it's over, we're hanging out. We're spending time with everyone that attends. And so sometimes you just got to show up. And so you gave the guy great advice. You got to show up, right? And the ones that show up, that's where the true relationships get built.
Yeah. And I think life, to me, the valuable things in life are experiences and relationships and friendships. And, I would rather have that than a Lamborghini, So, and it's pretty.
Have you always felt that way, Ron, or has that been evolution for you?
I think it's, looking back at my life, I think it's something that it's how I've always been. I've always chosen experiences over, I went out last night country dancing for the first time in a year now that COVID is over. And when I walked in, I noticed this guy wearing a nice hat, nice shirt, all nice, all starched or whatever. And then I looked around and I just sat there and I'm like, man, I'm dressed like such a slob. I got a t-shirt on and I just thought, maybe, is there any other guys here just dressed like me? And everybody was kind of trying to look their best. So there's nothing wrong with trying to look your best. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just always saying I've never been a guy on the possession side in anything. I've always been more for the experiences. I like travel. I've been to 55 countries. You sent me to my first foreign country, Malaysia, other than Mexico. So that's the kind of stuff that I really live for, experiences.
Wow. Well said. Yeah, I've had to evolve to that point. I think I was pretty ambitious. But it wasn't for the things, but it was to overcome, never going to college and feeling like I had to really kind of just find my way in the world, and getting results was important. And so I was trying to climb that financial ladder, and I've had to learn through evolution of what works and what doesn't work, the importance of what you feel like you've had most of your life. So that's a strength and a gift you have. I think that's what's led you to becoming the U.S. Memory Champion and doing the Afghanistan Wall and so many other things, right? The memorizing Patrick's book and, just taking on these things that have intrinsic value within yourself.
Yeah, I probably one of the reasons it was so easy for me to invest the money I did in Bitcoin in 2017 or whatever is because what am I going to do with it? I don't really care if I buy a car with it. I'm not going to go buy new clothes with it. What am I going to do? So I think that's part of it. But I'm not, I am ambitious. I think, I know I'm ambitious. My ambition just always doesn't have a dollar number on it. And who's to say that's right or wrong? It's just is, right?
Exactly. Well, so Ron, hey, thanks, man, for coming and spending the day. We did this by Zoom, but we're in the same location right now.
Yeah,
we spent an hour
there and fist bump you.
Yeah, we spent an hour and a half talking about things just to keep this from being a 3-hour podcast. We already had our conversation before we started filming, and now we're about to have our next one after this is over. Appreciate you, my friend. If people want to get your Black Belt Memory program, if they want to book you to speak, what's the best ways to get a hold of you?
Go to blackbeltmemory.com to get the course, and ron@brainathlete.com is my email. ron@brainathlete.com. Brain like brain in your head, athlete like an Olympic athlete.
Love it. And we both said we would sign some Success Habits book, personalize that for some people. So if anyone wants to get the digital copy of the Success Habits book, send an email to info@kylewilson.com, put Success Habits book. And I'm going to do a drawing, and Ron, we'll pick out a couple of people that will also mail them a signed, personalized copy of the book. And my friend, thank you for your time. Make sure and go follow Ron. Make sure and get his program, and follow him on Facebook if you're not. And definitely follow him on YouTube. What's your YouTube channel? If they go to ronwhitevideo.com, it'll redirect to my YouTube, and that's an easy way to remember it. ronwhitevideo.com. Awesome. Thanks, my friend. Appreciate you. Okay, thank you. I'll go fist bump you in the other room in 1 second. Sounds good.